Hello YouTube. Today I will be showing you how to fly the Delta Glider 4 from the ground here in Wallops Island, Virginia, all the way to the fictional Brighton Beach spaceport on the moon. It's been so long since I've actually done Orbiter that I've started to get nostalgic about it, which is not good because it means that I'm not playing it enough. And the reason I'm not playing is because I'm just so darn busy. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I have done all of the math that we should need for the mission on a piece of paper, and I will explain it as we go. I believe that we'll need 15,763 meters per second of delta V per my calculations. I'm going to explain all of the, or most of the, lower level orbital mechanics as we go. And hopefully we won't need to do any math, but if we do, I have some things just in case. So now we can just go ahead and walk over to the craft, and then we'll just get inside. Alright, so now we're inside now, and you should know from my other videos how to start the craft up, so I'm not going to explain everything. But basically we're going to start the APU. And it looks like the APU has started nominally. So we're going to go ahead and turn on the generators. Generator 1 is good. Generator 2 is good. So now we can rely off of the APU only. That is a problem. So I need to fix that real quick, if you'll excuse me for that. Okay, so you'll notice that this got fixed, so we can now fly to the moon. So now the lower panel checks out. Just wait for our computer to boot before we do anything else. Okay, all set. So now we can turn our main bus on. And engine and airlock. So now we can begin closing doors. And we have that the inner door is closed. And we have the outer door closed. So now we can go ahead and close that nose cone and move on with the checklist. We want the gear hydraulic on, seat belts and spacesuits on. Now we'll go ahead and fix the middle panel. We have full fuel. And nearly full oxygen, so we're all set there. Let's just check this one more time. Good. Arm the ejection seats. And I'm going to close the canopy now. and watch that our life support systems activate. Okay, canopy's closed, life support systems have activated. So now we're going to go ahead and turn the radio on, and our MFD and HUD are set. And look at that, it was already red, so I don't have to fix it. That's kind of nice. Now I'm going to just configure this the way I like it.
Houston, Discovery for Step 4, LDRI TTC, you command at sync.
That's going to get annoying, so we might decide to turn it off later. There is our craft.
Okay, we were just wondering that. Here's auto on the tab.
Yeah, that's going to get very annoying. So here's what we can do, just for simulator purposes. We should be able to turn the comm volume.
Okay, I come.
Okay, good, it works. So now hopefully it's quiet enough that it doesn't really cause a problem. Now we can
pitch elevon, translation, rotation, atmospheric auto.
Controls now set properly, and the secondary HUD is set properly. Now there should be one more thing that we need to do. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself or something. Well, this will catch it.
Configuration correct.
Okay, so it seems we are okay. Ah, yes, I remembered what I was going to say. So, what is it? Pro 200 spec? No. 400. Hang on. That's it. Okay. So now we can taxi to the runway, and I will explain what has happened.
Hold speed autopilot engaged.
Okay, so for my calculations, I have done them for everything except... Wait a minute, where the heck are we going? Gonna make the turn here. Just made it. Okay. So I've made the calculations for just about everything except for inclination. If I wanted to factor in inclination, then I would have needed to treat the quantities as vectors as opposed to just scalars. Scalars makes things much easier, but of course it's a little bit unrealistic. So when I say 15,000 meters per second, I really mean 15,000 best case, no inclination change. And I just realized I haven't even looked at where the moon is, so we might actually be in trouble. I'm actually going to stop the craft right here, and let's see what the moon looks like. Yeah, that's about as bad as it could be. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stop the video and roll up to the runway. There I'm going to stop the craft and wait for night, because we can't launch until the moon's orbit passes over the facility, and right now that's not going to happen until tomorrow morning.
Hold speed autopilot engaged.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and stop the video now, and we'll come back tomorrow morning when the moon's plane has shifted enough for us to get into orbit. Okay, so it's the early morning hours now, and of course, from experience, everything that has to do with space for some reason likes to take place between the hours of 2 and 6 a.m. for some reason. That's just a way that things tend to work. I've been to at least 3 or 4 space events that kind of do this. And you'll notice that I have opened the hatch to let a little bit of air in, because the most useless thing in space travel is oxygen that you could have had but didn't have. Okay, now we should be sealed from the atmosphere. And I've also added a little bit of fuel because I took a look at this, and the inclination difference is going to be about 15 degrees, and I've just declared that as unacceptable for the current fuel loadout that we have. If we went ahead with only 9,600 or now 9,500 kilograms of fuel, then there is a chance, if a mistake is made, that we might not make it. And of course we want that, or we want to make it. Good, so the canopy is locked.
Configuration correct.
And we're ready for takeoff. Now, so what I'm going to do, that should be close enough. So now what we need to do is launch due east to match the moon's inclination, and then somewhere over Kenya probably we're going to need to do a plane change. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back to ground track and prepare this thing for takeoff. Let's make sure, good, the lights are working. And we're ready for takeoff. So I'm going to violate the hold short line now and go onto the runway. Wow, that looks like a that's either one massive building or it's a I see, it's 2 runways. Interesting. Alright, we'll just give a nice countdown from 3, and that's nice, we're actually already heading east. So we don't actually have to turn at all. Excellent. Okay, so the very first leg of the journey, getting into a parking orbit at 400 kilometers. Approximately 9,600 meters per second delta V if you account for the atmospheric loss. Atmospheric trim set for takeoff, and we are taking off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, takeoff, thrust set.
V1. Rotate.
Okay, rotating. Positive rate, gear up. Throttling back. Okay, we have a steady climb going. We're going to go ahead and resume full power and pitch up to 30 degrees to eliminate any atmospheric drag. We've just hit 10,000 feet, activating turbo pups. $20,000 feet. You'll notice that this is the current date and time. Well, kind of, except we went by it when this video was made, which means this should be Jupiter, and it is. So if you know astronomy and you know where Jupiter is during this time of year, 32,000 feet, then you know how to find Jupiter, for example. And the neat thing about this is that we're at the equinox, which means that the ecliptic line, if you'll see right here, intersects at the horizon. which means that the planets and Jupiter is actually a really good target to follow. Interestingly enough, 60,000 feet. And you know what? Since it's night, we're just going to go straight to the green, because it won't even matter. "75,000 feet, the air is starting to thin." Here is Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and here are the Delaware beaches. Philadelphia, New York, and Boston is way up there. We can see Richmond and Norfolk, Hampton Roads. Virginia Beach. 100,000 feet now. Switching now to the orbit display to see our current progress. So speaking of this from an orbital mechanics point of perspective, you can see that right now our eccentricity is very high. And this is because we've just taken off with little velocity, and our semi-major axis is very low. It's only about half of the Earth, which is what you would expect at this point, half of an Earth radius. We're starting to cook a little bit, so I'm going to begin pitching up. Okay, we're starting to really heat up now. You can see the underside, we're already developing a plasma wave. Okay, so we're cooling down now. Above 100,000 feet, I'm not going to give out feet call-outs because I feel like Imperial units have no place in space. It should only be metric. So we're now at 45 kilometers. You will notice now that the automatic air intake for the engines has closed, and we're now in RCS flight mode, which means that our engines, our RCS engines, are now firing to assist with the control of the vehicle. Three kilometers per second.
Okay, so Papa 2, even though it's considered complete, can't be considered complete until we know that all the other ballast is in place. Is that a good statement?
Man, if they should pay attention to how boring some of the communications are. No one wants to hear about ballast. If I could have the opportunity, I would listen into Neil and Buzz going back and forth about landing on the moon, which is about what we're going to do. Okay, we're descending again, so I'm going to begin pitching up. And if I go outside, you will be able to see the RCS jets firing. Sorry about that, that was just time. Five kilometers per second. Now you can notice on the orbit screen that the orbit has become more egg-shaped and the eccentricity is falling. And now our semi-major axis is about 3/4 of the radius of the Earth. This needs to be above the radius of the Earth in order for us to be orbiting in our present state. And we will cut engines out of MECO when the apogee reaches 400 kilometers, which is the target altitude. And our vessel mass has just now passed under 19,000 kilograms, which I was not expecting this early in the flight. But seeing as that we are now 62 kilometers, that is about the target altitude for MECO. So we are set. We're now at 6 kilometers per second. Yeah, fuel is just fine. Kilometers and now relieving all upward pressure on the air flight control surfaces. The orbit is now approaching a circular trajectory. Seven kilometers per second. I am now cutting the turbo pump. And the sun is rising. That's beautiful. Kind of a welcome to space, if you will. Okay, our apogee and perigee are now switching positions. We've now broken 100 kilometers for apogee. And here is 200, 300, and 400. Main engine cutoff. So we are now at 7,585 meters per second, and we are so close to being in orbit, we will need to do a circularization maneuver. So we're still kind of low. We're only at about 77 kilometers. So now I'm going to sit, and I'm going to wait until we get up above 100 kilometers before I start maneuvering the craft. Because if I go to the atmospheric data, we still have about 3 newtons per square meter of force perturbing the craft. And I don't want that messing up the orbit. So I'm going to wait. And it shouldn't take very long because we're going up very quickly. And there is 0 degrees. We've now passed into the thermosphere. Let's load the pro-grade autopilot. So now whenever we need it, we can go ahead and activate it, and the craft will face the pro-grade velocity vector. Okay, 90 kilometers. 1 newton per square meter, and I think we can call it there. So we're going to go ahead and execute pro-grade autopilot and change the HUD to the orbital vector reference. So we're now over the middle Atlantic Ocean, the middle North Atlantic Ocean. Whoops, let me go ahead and turn that off so that I can talk. So here we are over the North Atlantic Ocean. The sun has just risen. It's dark back at North America where we've taken off. So we're in a steady state now. I have forgotten to lock the hydraulic pressure, but that's okay. On the gear. Okay, so now that we're in orbit,
Rotation.
we can disable the atmospheric automatics because we won't go back to them. Oh, by the way, now you'll notice that our speed is actually 7.9 kilometers per second. The reason for that happening is because the craft is orbiting a rotating Earth. So if we went back to the surface, there'd be a difference of about 400 meters per second, because that's the tangential velocity of the Earth rotating at the surface. We can safe the ejection seats now, because nothing really will happen with them. We can turn off the life support backup system now. The primary works just fine. And we can deploy the radiator to help shunt some heat around the craft. Because now we can also turn or take our seatbelts off. Because now what happens is there's no air, which means all of the sun's radiation is going to beat down on the craft, and it is going to heat this thing up. So what we need to do is, on the dark side of the craft, face the radiator, and the radiator will dump all of the heat that the craft creates, or rather intercepts, and will radiate it off to space. Heat dump, if you will. So now I'm going to change the display to the orbit plane. And now you can see that we're going to need to do a plane change maneuver. Now, given the time of year, the moon orbits at a 6 degree, let me see, I believe it's 6 degrees respective to the ecliptic. But then the ecliptic is a certain amount, 23.5 degrees off of that, so 23.5 minus 17, or minus 5, is about 17. And I think that's what the inclination shows. Yeah, that's about 17, maybe a little bit more. So that would explain the change in the moon. So now we're going to go to the aligned planes MFD, and we can target the orbiting celestial body, the moon, and it's about 20 degrees. So now if I wanted to calculate, actually I'm going to go ahead and unload the program right now, and we're going to face, and I need to check the map one more time. Yes, we need to decrease inclination. So spec 3 will put us in orbit normal. Neat little fun fact, it's called orbit normal because it points us in the normal vector. And if you've taken vector math, then you know what the normal vector is. Okay, we're now orbit plus. So, I'm going to accelerate time so that we can skip through this cruising phase of the flight. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. No, I wanted this one. Okay. So we can skip through the cruising phase of the flight a little bit and wait until the node here gets down to 77, so t over 2 because of the acceleration factor coefficient. So I'm going to pause the video now and actually come back when we arrive here. So see you then. Okay, so we're about to make the burn now. Meanwhile, our altitude has come up a little bit, I think. Yes, we're now at 230 kilometers, so we're a little bit higher. So let's go ahead and calculate this now. 158 seconds, factor in the 2, is at 79. So at 81 seconds, I will begin the throttle up, and it will be a 4-second integrated acceleration. And this will not count towards the delta V calculations that I did. If I did want it to count, then I would have to treat this as a vector, this being a k vector, and then I would have to plug the numbers in, find a magnitude, and then divide over it to get a unit vector. And then with that unit vector, oops, time to burn, 2, 0, 0, -1, -2, okay. So I kind of messed that up a little bit because I forgot about the time. Now you can see the inclinations counting down. And you will note that this inclination map here is approaching that of the moon. So this is going to be a longer burn, so I can actually go outside and we can look at sub-Saharan Africa while we discuss this. So, basically the idea is that we need to treat the whole thing as a unit vector, and then you plug that into the arc cosine, and then you get like an engine pointing vector, and then that gives you the energy that you have in a certain direction, and then you can use that with your semi-major axis to find out what your delta V needs to be, and then that's how you would do it for inclination. I will do that for my Noordstenland-Tenisa series. However, I will not be doing that for this, because this is just a simple tutorial. You have all of the access to the MFDs. But the first time we do this in Noordstenland-Tenisa, we will not have access to the MFDs. We will have to derive them. I've never heard of Lake Volta before. Interesting. Inclination is now below 7 degrees with that of the moon. Degrees. 1 degree. And here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cut the engines. Well, not quite yet. Okay, now we cut them. There we go. Our relative inclination now basically matches the moon, and we are completed. So now we can resume the normal systems here, and we can put this back onto ground track. I'm going to do a mass budget calculation right now to make sure that we still have enough fuel on board to complete the mission. So see you in just a bit. Yes, we are doing just fine in the fuel department. I checked it, and we have enough fuel given a linear state, which is not the case because we lose mass. So that means that we will have enough to reach the moon, theoretically, if we did it perfectly without even the bay tank. And that's assuming a linear case. So we should be just fine. So now what I'm going to do is fast forward until we reach 400 kilometers, or depending on where the moon is. There it is. It is it's actually very close to a new moon. Okay. So if the moon is over there, okay, so here's the here is the intersection with the current location above the Earth. Okay, so now I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to need to do another calculation to figure out when we need to burn. Okay, it looks like translunar injection is going to be about 4.95 days. And the moon will move 63.75 degrees in that time. So we need to shoot 65 degrees ahead of the moon. So now what we can do is target the moon, and there now we should have the moon's orbit and our orbit on here. And now we need to figure out we need to find two numbers that we can relate in terms of longitude. So I'm going to pause the video and see if I can pick out one that's factors on longitude. By the way, the apogee is in 1,000 seconds. That's when we have to do the circularization burn. So we have 1,000 seconds to solve this math problem, or else. Okay, so the math has been done successfully. So the moon is here. I found the true anomaly and argument of periapsis. So that gives us a coordinate scheme. So what I did was subtract our argument of periapsis from the moon's argument of periapsis, and then express the true anomaly in terms of our true anomaly. So this minus 75, and then we get 177 degrees. Then we need to do it exactly the opposite of the moon's true anomaly in our transformed true anomaly, and that comes to 357 degrees. So when our true anomaly is 357 degrees, then we perform our translunar injection burn. And I will use the transfer MFD, and that will validate basically what I'm saying. And then, of course, if things are completely different, then you know I was wrong, and then I have to review something because I should not be wrong. So I'm going to pause the video now until we get to apogee, and then we do circularization. Okay. We're about 2 minutes from apogee now, and we don't have to burn much, assuming that this will be the velocity that we're going to burn with, which should be close enough. I can quickly calculate. Actually, wait a minute. No, I have already calculated, or have I? I actually don't have it on me. That's okay. We can just assume that the burn is going to be 10 seconds because it should be. So we begin burning when the time to apogee is 10 seconds. So we'll come back at that point. I've re-enabled the autopilot. We're now 20 seconds from apogee. We're a little bit higher than I anticipated. So instead of circularizing, we're going to raise this to 400 kilometers because that's what I did the math for. So here's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, begin the burn, and 400, cut engines. And we're off a little bit, so I'm going to quickly translate a little bit. Okay, in real life, you would never do this because the math you can get back. The fuel you can't. But we have plenty of RCS, so there's no concern for that. Now we need to check our argument of perigee. And it looks like it hasn't changed by much. So we should be good. But one of the annoying things about orbital perturbations is that you have to keep on running these calculations. Okay, I've deloaded the autopilot. And we're now going to fast forward towards the start of the translunar injection burn. So we can... That's already on ground track. So while we're drifting, I can explain the math. So, we have to do a transfer burn between our parking orbit and the moon. The moon orbit's at 384 times 10 to the 6 meters, or 384 megameters. So what I need to do is I need to add our current altitude, which is the first orbit, onto the altitude of the moon, which is the second orbit, and divide by 2. So the radius of our orbit plus the radius of the moon's orbit divided by 2 equals the semi-major axis of the transfer, which is 195.6 megameters. Using that number, we can then find the energy required of the transfer by negative mu of the Earth, which is 6.67 times 10 to the negative 11th for the universal G constant multiplied by the mass of the Earth, which is 5.98 times 10 to the 24th kilograms, and then divide that by 2 times the semi-major axis of the transfer, which is 196-ish megameters. And we get the energy as negative 1,019,596, and I believe that's in joules. And then we do the same thing using the semi-major axis of our current altitude orbit for the transfer, which I just actually realized the semi-major axis is going to be off, so now our calculations are going to be off, and oh no, that's bad. Whatever. So the energy of the parking is going to be negative 29 million ish joules. So then what I have to do with that is plug that into... Actually, I didn't went ahead with that one. That one was just for, I think, sanity check or something. But what I really needed to do was plug it into the Vis-Vifa equation. So we have negative mu of the Earth, which you know, and then we have multiplied by quantity 2 divided by the radius of the orbit minus 1 over the semi-major axis. The radius of the orbit is going to be where we currently are, and the semi-major axis currently in the transfer. So therefore we have that the velocity, and then you have to take the square root of that. And then we find the velocity is 10,736 meters per second. Subtract out the 7,671 meters per second, and we find that a delta V of translunar injection of 3,065 meters per second is needed, and that is the number that we have to burn. Now, at 3,065 meters per second, the mass of the craft is 16,935 kilograms. We are at 380,000 newtons for both of our engines. Divided by 16,935 means that we're going to need 22 No, that's wrong. I feel like I sound like Doctor Who right now. 380,000 newtons of force divided by... yes, of course. 16,935 means 22 meters per second squared of acceleration. We need 3,065 meters per second delta V divided by 22.438. And we have 138 seconds of burn time divided by 2. 68 seconds prior to the true anomaly being whatever, divided by 60 equals 1.14 times about 4 degrees, which means that 4.5 minus 357 minus 4.59, meaning when the true anomaly is 352.41 degrees. And now, of course, my pen decides to give out 0.41 degrees. We begin the burn. And that's just relative. Thanks to Orbiter, we have absolute. So now we can go ahead and target the moon. And then hypothetical transfer will start increasing for the delta V. That's 1 kilometer per second. And now I know ahead of time that our delta V should be 3,065. So because I already know this, I don't have to play around with the numbers. I can just plug them in. Okay, 7, 8, 9, 3,065. Now we need to change the time of ejection burn. And now here's the trick. We have a higher semi-major axis than anticipated, which means the delta V is going to be ever so slightly different. And then that's what it's going to be. Oh, but no, did I forget to factor in the 60-degree change in... I think I calculated this the wrong way. So, yes, unfortunately, my math was wrong. This instead is actually where we need to be burning. And it looks like I didn't actually factor in the moon's position. If I add 32 to 352.41 degrees, actually that's... doesn't matter. 357 degrees. And now if I added on to that 45... Why did I add 40? Oh, yes, of course. 64 degrees rounding means that at 61 degrees of true anomaly. So here's the problem. I forgot to factor in the 60 degrees that the moon moves during the time. So we're going to go ahead and continue fast forwarding now. Okay, so then that's the problem. And then this will give us the time to ejection, I believe. And we're looking at... Oh man, I hope I wrote down that burn time. Pause the video for a minute. Okay, the sun is rising, and I have just actually now noticed that the delta V in this case is actually 3,071. So we were 6 meters per second off. Just 6. Which is actually really impressive, so that you can see the orbital calculations factor in quite nicely, which is rather great. Okay, so 69 seconds before the time to eject is the time that we need to fire the engines. So at 71 seconds, I'm going to begin an integrated throttle up. Okay, we're turning prograde now. And this is going to be a little bit off, and it's going to be off because I didn't decide to do the calculus version of how our mass is changing with respect to time. So that's okay. What did I calculate the new? It was 64 degrees of true anomaly, wasn't it? Or maybe it was something else. I think it was about 64 degrees. Anyhow, the burn is coming up. At 71. Yes, 71. So, or no, 69. Right? To burn. I messed it up again. Okay, that's probably integrated. And we're accelerating. 8 kilometers per second. So one more thing that I need to add as to why our calculations are going to be off is because we are using the calculations for an impulse burn, which is impossible. So another thing with calculus is you have to figure out the difference in location for time. So the fact that we're not always going to be burning right here means that this math is going to be a little bit off, and there's really nothing that we can do about it, unfortunately, except sit back and watch. Hey, look, it's Puerto Rico. And what do we have here? Haiti and Dominican Republic. We're over the Caribbean. That's actually kind of funny. Here is Venezuela. Let me see if I can start pointing out a few things. That, I think, is St. Martin. That's Antigua. That's Barbuda. I don't know if you're pronouncing it right, but like the Grenades or something, St. Vincent Grenades, I think, are here. Or some chain of islands that's associated together is there. The Bahamas are up here. They're not visible. Okay, we're coming up on the time now. The velocity of the transfer needed was like 10,000. Come on, let me set 10,736. Here we go. And boom! Right there. Precise. You can't even tell. So now I'm going to take off the hypothetical transfer orbit. And for mid-course correction, we don't really have to do anything, except maybe just a little bit on approach and maybe a little relative inclination. I am ecstatic about this burn because it was dead on accurate. And I think it was because I calculated everything beforehand. Our altitude is increasing. So now I'm going to put the Windows filter on high to prepare to pass through the Van Allen belts. And I'm going to do one more thing. What was I going to do? Oh, yes. Change from altitude to radius, because we're leaving the realm of low Earth orbit. And now we can deactivate the prograde autopilot. And there was one more thing, yes, that I had to do. Arm retro doors would be great to do. Let's check our fuel. 20% fuel, that's just fine. Yes. We can also deploy the long-range antenna. We have 20 days of oxygen on tank 1, or tank A, so we should be just fine in that department. Ah, yes, I was going to turn the lights off. There's no reason for a light in translunar injection. So here comes our high gain antenna. And we're going to target the moon, which I believe has just risen. Yes, the moon has just risen. Here it is. It's off to the left. Okay. The high gain antenna has been deployed. And it's going to start soaking up radiation because it's pointed directly at the sun right now. Well, kind of. So now we're going to target the moon. If I can remember how to use this thing. Oh, yeah. So now we have to go all the way down in the mass order of the solar system. So, of course, at the top you have the sun is the most massive object, and then you have Jupiter, and then Saturn, and then Earth, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Ganymede, Titan, Callisto, Io, and the moon. Set. And we have a signal from the moon, and it's quite strong, which is kind of nice. So we now have a pointing vector to the moon, and I'm going to change that to monitor. That will drop off. Eventually we'll lose the signal, but we can keep an eye on our distance, which is what I really want to do. That's it. We're in cruise. Accelerating now to 10 times the normal rate. And what a surprise, just like in the last video that I did with the, I think it was the XR2 to the moon. Or it may have been the very first trip to the moon on the tutorials. Again, we are over the Pacific Ocean, I believe. Except I don't recognize this landmass. No, this is Africa. We're over the Atlantic Ocean, of course. So Africa will be the last thing we see. And the cool thing is, because there's a new moon, that means we're going to have full Earth. So we will get the classic blue marble picture. And I'm actually going to face the Earth. Oh, shoot.
Rotation.
Forgot to go off of translation. So I'm going to actually face the Earth, and we'll get the classic blue marble out of our window, which is rather nice. It's 10 times the normal rate, and 100 times the normal rate. I guess there should be no surprise that we get the blue marble picture, because the Apollo astronauts did the same thing, and oh my gosh! Look at that! Oh, I'm going to have to stop the video. Okay, we're good. Check this out. The perfect recreation of the blue marble. This is this exact situation that the Apollo astronauts were in that created this image of the Earth. And it looks fantastic. When I see a picture like this, it really makes me think, and it should make everyone think. But even more than think, I love to live on this planet. Just very looking at it is just, you know, blue is such an exotic color. You know, you have all this black, and you have the sun, which is whitish yellow, and then you have this, which is whitish yellow. That's Venus, by the way. And then you have the moon, which is just gray. And then you have this beautiful blue marble, which is the Earth. It's fantastic. 100 times the normal rate again. That is just an excellent picture. Okay, let me see if I can remember. Our altitude is now 25,000 kilometers, so we're well into MEO, I believe. GEO is at 42,164 kilometers. So we're not even yet out to geostationary Earth orbit. After we go through geo, we'll be in high Earth orbit, HEO, and when we're in high Earth orbit, I will move to the 1,000 times the regular rate, and that should be the highest speed that we need. You can see we're already slowing down. Let's turn and face the Earth so that we can keep our panels on the screen here. And you can see now we're now less than 4,000 meters per second. So just like that, we're already less than we're quite substantially less in terms of speed. Note how the horizon line passes right through the center of the Earth, as we would expect, because that's the gravity source, of course. We've passed through, we're now in high Earth orbit. We've passed through geostationary Earth orbit. So now we're going to go to 1,000 times the normal rate and watch the Earth turn away from us as we start to meet the Moon. It hasn't even been a day yet. Hang on a second. Did I do 2 pi or pi? I could have sworn I did pi. Translunar injection was supposed to take 6 days. So I must have done 2 pi on the calculator, because we're just now hitting not even yet 1 day. That's crazy. So the G value down here at the bottom that you're seeing is the strength of gravitational force. The Earth is now responsible for 60% of the gravitational force, and very soon it will give that up to the Sun. And then the question comes, how can the Sun possibly be pulling on the Moon stronger than the Earth is? And the answer is because there's less relative force, because you have enough centripetal force from the Earth going around the Sun that the Moon can stay in orbit around the Earth, because the gravitational tug that it feels is stronger than the Earth feels, or sorry, that the Moon feels going around the Sun. So because of that, orbiting the Earth is possible. Okay, when Earth gives up its seat as the strongest gravitational body, which should be almost any second now, then we will do a mid-course correction maneuver. Meanwhile, the Earth has shrunk, and the Moon should be... hang on a second. The Earth is here. Moon should be like here-ish. Oh, there it is. Right there. Back up to, up, right there. And now the Sun is the predominant gravitational source. But like I said, we're orbiting the Sun. So the Earth has a stronger pull on the Moon. Okay, so we're now almost at the Lagrange point between the Earth and the Moon. Yeah. So, actually, no, we're not almost there. Never mind. We need to do a mid-course correction maneuver. So the way we're going to do this is by going to the moon orbit and looking at the approach here. I'm going to do a little bit of analysis, so I'm going to pause the video now while I figure out the way I want to solve the problem. Okay, so what I can do is solve this from a orbital knowledge perspective. The graphs say that the moon is going to get into the moon's position before we do. So I can tell you that the Sun and Jupiter have probably perturbed the orbit so that we are no longer going as fast as we had originally calculated. This is to be expected because we can't really integrate or not integrate, but we can't solve a three-body problem analytically. So that's why we have to do mid-course correction maneuvers. It should be a very easy mid-course correction maneuver, and you'll notice I am manually controlling the craft because the computers are programmed to rotate to the strongest gravitational influence. So there we go. So what you will notice is that we can't face this prograde, so we have to do it manually. And now what we need to do is just give us a little bit more burn. So I'm going to start on translation and start translating forward by firing the jets forward like this. And I'm going to do that a couple times until this closes. Okay, so you can note that the orange dashed here is where the moon arrives, and this gray line is where we intersect the moon's orbit. The two have to meet in order for us to get there. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem like this is graphically. If we had a two-line element, we could plug it into a calculator, and then we would be able to calculate out what mid-course correction maneuver we would need based on the plot that we are given. And that is the mid-course correction maneuver. So we're done. So I'll pause the video again and come back in a minute.